rồi, leo lên ngồi đó không che. Kệ đi đá nhiều cái đồng nghiệp đi.
Xin yêu cầu các anh chị floor manager, please make sure all our guests start coming in. We are begin to comment out event in about 8 minutes.
Được không? Bắt xong được không?
Được nhưng mà nó yếu.
Yếu quá.
Yếu, nó không còn hiệu sự.
Anh để ngay cửa sổ mà cũng bị nữa.
Yes.
Chơi luôn. Ok. Đừng đi chung. Ồ, em để con đồ hộp theo. Không chịu lấy luôn. Đi. Lấy gì Uber taxi không biết của nó. Xe lúc nào
quay cái mặt kính
Đúng
sau
rồi.
sáng.
Yes. Khó quá.
Không sao em đẩy đi.
Bây giờ chỉ có nói là em ra không có cái gì.
cái này bị cái đèn.
Đúng rồi, cái đèn nó soi.
Zoom vô. Anh zoom vô hai đứa.
Yeah.
Program will begin in about 3 minutes.
Tại sao không zoom vô hai đứa là nói nó bị đen.
Đúng rồi, bị đen. Để xa thì đẹp.
Em zoom vô thì ok.
Không thì ok.
Đừng có để xa quá.
Dạ,
Bị
để
đen.
không anh biết anh.
Block cái đường này được cảnh sát nó
Không sợ rồi,
Cái này
đó.
của ông Vân.
Anh nói cái ông của anh á. Nói cái ông làm với anh á. Chúng tôi không có liên quan gì.
Chúng tôi không có phận sự.
thì cùng làm việc với nhau hai nó cùng team mà thì nói được nói nó khó lắm.
Em với chúng tôi không có phần sự.
Đó thấy không? Mình nói khó lắm. Nói tắt cái đèn nữa, đèn lên.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 31st Commemoration Day of Vietnam Human Rights, May 11. Please rise for National Anthem. We will begin with the United States National Anthem first, following the Republic of Vietnam, and then the moment of silence. The United States National Anthem.
Quốc ca Hoa Kỳ. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Republic of Vietnam National Anthem.
Quốc ca Việt Nam Cộng Hòa. Người công dân ơi, quốc gia nhân ngày xoay phong, đồng lòng cùng đi hy sinh tiếc gì thăng sông, vì tương lai quốc dân cùng sông pha phát lên, làm sao cho núi sông từ nay luôn vững bền, dùng cho thầy phơi trên đun rau, thủ nước lấy máu đào đêm mau, nòi giống nước biên phải cần giải nguy, người công dân luôn vững bền tâm trí, hùng tráng quyết chiến đấu làm cho khắp nơi vang tiếng người nước Nam cho đến muôn đời. Công dân ơi, mau viết lời dưới cờ, công dân ơi, mau làm cho ngôi bờ thoát cơn tàn pha vé vàng, đời sống xứng danh nhìn Nam dòng sông là hồng.
The following is a moment of silence. A moment of silence to reflect on the accomplishments of our ancestors who overcame all challenges to build the country, defend the border, resist foreign invaders, and pass it on to future generations. A moment of silence to honor the courageous souls of the warriors who give their life to safeguard our country, maintain the values of freedom, democracy, humanism, and human rights for all. The moment of silence to honor the lives of many captives who died in communist jails, torture camps, sacked forests, poisoned water, and exile between ideological repercussions of consciousness and secular hatred. The life of the boat people who risked crossing the ocean and the border to escape unjust treatment and despair, where spirit and faith are crushed by the consequence of communist tyranny. The moment of silence to honor all the unjust victims, the prisoner, and conscience who have suffered and are still suffering injustice and mistreatment in prison in the name of promoting human rights and principles.
Phút mặc niệm tưởng nhớ anh linh các bậc tiền nhân trải ngàn gian khó gây dựng tổ quốc giang sơn gấm vóc, gìn giữ bờ cõi chống giặc ngoại xâm, truyền lại cho thế hệ con cháu tưởng niệm anh linh anh hùng tử sĩ liệt nữ xả thân bảo vệ giang sơn bờ cõi, bảo tồn giá trị tự do dân chủ nhân bản nhân quyền cho người dân. Tưởng niệm bao linh hồn tù nhân lưu đày trong ngục tù cộng sản, trong các trại khổ sai, rừng thiên nước độc, đọa đầy giữa hệ lụy, ý thức hệ và lòng thù hận vô thần. Bao oan hồn, thuyền nhân, nạn nhân vượt biển, vượt biên, oan khiên, thống khổ, nỗi đau, thể xác lẫn tinh thần và niềm tin bị trà đạp bởi hệ lụy, bạo quyền. Tưởng nhớ bao dân oan tù nhân lương tâm, chịu bao oan trái ngược đãi trong ngục tù vì lý tưởng, thăng tiến giá trị con người. Phút mặc niệm bắt đầu.
The moment of silence begins. The moment of silence ended. Please be seated.
Phút mặc niệm chấm dứt. Xin kính mời quý vị an tọa.
Good afternoon. Once again, my name is Brandon. I have the privilege to be part of the host of the program today with Ms. Destiny, the president of the Vietnamese community down in Richmond, Virginia. Thank you for your presence, especially those who come across the country from different states. I knew for sure from Texas and a few other. Thank you for your time and your willingness to participate in this very special event. To begin the program, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Hong Pham, the current serves as Chairman of Board Director for the Vietnam Human Rights on May 11, and the President of the Board of Executive of the United Vietnamese American Community of Pennsylvania. He's also the former President of the Federations of Vietnamese American Communities of the USA, and the founder and advisor of the Republic of Vietnam Next Generation. A distinguished community leader, Mr. Pham is widely recognized by his dedication to public service, youth leadership, development, and advocacy for the freedom and democracy and human rights in Vietnam. His work continued to inspire and mobilize Vietnamese Americans to engage in civic life and champion of the cause of justice both at home and abroad. Please welcome Mr. Hồng Pham, and please excuse me for the last slide.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Members of Congress, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the organized committee, it is both great honor and privilege to welcome you to this meaningful gathering as we commemorate the 31st anniversary of Vietnam Human Rights Day. Today, we are united not only to reflect on the strides in promoting human rights for the Vietnamese people, but also recognize that much remains. Fundamental liberties, freedom of religion, speech, and expression are still being denied to many in Vietnam. Our gathering reaffirms our shared commitment to uphold these essential rights and to amplify the voices of those who are silent. Before we begin our program, we'd like to express our sincere gratitude to those who made today's event possible. First and foremost, we extend our heartfelt thanks to Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia and Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, co-sponsor of this important event. We are honored by their continued leadership and look forward for their participation and remarks. We are also grateful for the presence and support of Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary Julie Turner, Ambassador Julie Turner, as well as many members of Congress who have long championed human rights and ensure its place and priority in both domestic and foreign policy agendas. We warmly acknowledge the partnership of key organizations such as U.S. Commission on Internet Religious Freedom, Victim of Communism, Memorial Foundation, and many co-sponsoring institutions whose advocacy bring global attention to injustice and strengthen accountability. We are especially honored to welcome delegates from China, Laos, and your presence here underscore the shared aspirations for those across the globe who are engaged in the pursuit of freedom, liberty, and justice. To our guests and participants, whether you travel from across the country or join us from abroad, people from Paris, I know that's okay, from France, thank you for coming. Please accept our deepest thanks for your steadfast dedication to the cause of human rights. Lastly, we'd like to acknowledge and commend the many individuals of our organization team on the right-hand side of the building, somewhere in the building, whose tireless effort have made this event possible. Thank you for your presence, your commitment, and your voice. Let us continue our important work, united in purpose and unwavering in our resolve to advance freedom, democracy, and human rights for all. Thank you very much for listening. And want to make sure the program can continue. I'd like to introduce the keynote speaker today. Ambassador Julie Turner currently serves as an acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, DRL, at the U.S. Department of State, overseeing the Bureau of Africa, East Asia, and Pacific International Labor Affairs, and Multilateral and Global Affairs team. Ambassador Turner previously served as the U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean human rights issues from October 2023 to January 2025. Ambassador Turner is globally recognized as an expert and in the area of human rights and democracy, and has worked over the past 20 years to strengthen democratic institutions and promote human rights throughout the East Asia and Pacific region. She serves as the Office Director in DRL's Office of East Asia and Pacific, and previously was the Director for Southwest Asia at the National Security Council. Early in her time at State Department, she served as Special Assistant to the first U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean human rights and worked as a program analyst in the Bureau of Information Resources Management Office of E-Diplomacy. As career civil service employee and former Presidential Management Fellow, Ambassador Turner has dedicated her career to advance human rights around the world. Ambassador Turner is graduated from Pepperdine University and University of Maryland. Please join us to give a warm, enthusiastic welcome to Ambassador Turner. Let's show our appreciation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm so pleased to be here with you today. As my bio reads, I've been working on Southeast Asia for many years, specifically on U.S.-Vietnam relations, and so it's a real pleasure to be here today with so many members of the Vietnamese American community who have dedicated your own lives or suffered directly human rights abuses that we're talking about today. And so thank you all for being here, and thank you all for the work that you do. I would also like to thank the Vietnam Human Rights Day Advisory Board for helping to organize today's event, as well as our distinguished moderator and speakers for sharing their powerful testimonies with us today. And also to Senator Tim Kaine and Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick for co-sponsoring this year's commemoration. Thank you all. Friends and colleagues, it's an honor to be here to commemorate Vietnam Human Rights Day and to discuss this topic of paramount importance, the state of human rights in Vietnam. Over the past 3 decades, we have witnessed significant progress in our bilateral relationship with Vietnam. Our partnership has grown stronger, and today Vietnam is one of the United States' key partners in the Indo-Pacific region. We have a robust bilateral relationship, including our partnership on dioxin remediation and the removal of unexploded ordnance. These initiatives show the U.S. commitment to deepening our ties and building a foundation for a better future. Education and cultural exchange programs have also played a vital role in strengthening our relationship. Thousands of Vietnamese students are studying in the United States, gaining valuable knowledge and skills that they bring back to Vietnam. These educational exchanges foster mutual understanding and create lasting bonds between our peoples. The United States and Vietnam have been working together to address common security challenges, such as maritime security, disaster response, and peacekeeping operations. Our cooperation in these areas contributes to regional stability and promotes a free and open Indo-Pacific. While these achievements reflect a strong relationship between our countries, it's essential to acknowledge that our relationship has areas where we must do more to make progress. One of those most critical areas where we must make progress is human rights. The America First policy under the Trump administration emphasizes the importance of safeguarding American interests. Human rights are intrinsic to these interests, as intrinsic to these interests, as reflecting a commitment to freedom for all individuals. By advocating for human rights globally, we promote stability, prosperity, and security, key components of our relationship with Vietnam. We recognize that Vietnam has made significant strides in improving the lives of its citizens, including reducing poverty, expanding access to education, and improving healthcare. These achievements are commendable and reflect the Vietnamese government's commitment to the well-being of its people. At the same time, we're concerned and would like to see more progress on protecting freedom of expression, freedom of religion and belief, and the rule of law. These are rights and principles that must be upheld. First, freedom of expression is a cornerstone of any free and just society. When individuals are free to share ideas, it fosters an environment conducive to innovation, economic growth, and technical advancement. In Vietnam, however, the right to freedom of expression is under threat. Journalists, bloggers, and human rights defenders often encounter censorship, harassment, and imprisonment for expressing dissenting views. Vietnam continues to use vague national security provisions to restrict the exercise of freedom of expression, which has led to a troubling number of cases of harassment, unjust arrest, and harsh prison sentences targeting human rights defenders, journalists, religious freedom advocates, and everyday people who peacefully express their views. Human rights organizations estimate there are approximately 170 unjustly detained political prisoners in Vietnam, including approximately 40 journalists, 5 of whom have contributed to Radio Free Asia and Voice of America. We urge the Vietnamese government to release unjustly detained political prisoners, to allow greater freedom of expression, and to reduce restrictions on the press and online platforms. We are also concerned that these acts of censorship often extend beyond Vietnam's borders. I'm deeply troubled by reports that Vietnamese authorities continue to coerce, harass, intimidate, surveil, and censor dissidents and activists in exile for exercising their rights, including reported incidents of transnational repression targeting U.S. citizens. I know many of you have also shared harrowing experiences and described the far-reaching negative consequences of transnational oppression on your own lives and those of your colleagues and family. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge both People SOS, a U.S.-based organization, and the contributions of Director Nguyen Dinh Pham, a U.S. citizen who has publicly shared his experience as a victim of this overreach. The United States prioritizes the safety of all U.S. citizens and will continue to push back against governments that arbitrarily and unlawfully surveil, threaten, and attack Americans who are exercising their universal human rights. We are also concerned that the government of Vietnam maintains significant control over religious practices and that Vietnam's laws include vague provisions to restrict the exercise of freedom of religion or belief in the stated interest of national security and social unity. Members of religious groups without government recognition continue to face government harassment, including, in some cases, physical assaults, arrests, travel restrictions, and property seizures or destruction. We further urge Vietnam to take steps to address our human rights concerns and to ensure all individuals can practice their religion or belief without interference. Finally, I would like to finish today with a challenge to each person in this room that you continue to make your voices heard beyond Vietnam Human Rights Day. As Vietnamese American citizens, you have a unique perspective and a powerful voice in shaping the future of U.S.-Vietnam relations. Your experiences, insights, and advocacy are invaluable. By engaging in dialogue, raising awareness, and supporting initiatives that promote human rights, you bring a unique and powerful perspective that has a meaningful impact on the lives of people in both countries. The relationship between the United States and Vietnam is a testament to the power of reconciliation, cooperation, and shared values. Together, we can continue to build a partnership that is not only strong and prosperous, but also rooted in respect for human dignity. By advocating for human rights, we promote stability, prosperity, and security benefiting both Vietnam and the United States. The voices of Vietnamese Americans play a vital role in this advocacy, bringing personal experiences and influencing policy. Let's continue to stand firm in our commitment to human rights, ensuring that every individual can enjoy the freedoms and dignity they deserve. Together, we can build a world where human rights are respected and our shared values are upheld. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Everything she said today reflect what went on yesterday as we, the Vietnamese community, commemorate 50 years the fall of Saigon. And here she is walking with us, together with the Vietnamese community and also other community who suffering under communist regime. And once again, thank you to be the voice for us. Thank you. The following segments will be the award ceremony, which we would like to dedicate to our Mr. Mark Rubio. And for his award presentations, he's a distinguished. It is a pronounced honor for me, on behalf of organizing committee and the Vietnam Human Rights Day May 11 organization, to stand before you today to present this award to a leader whose unwavering commitment to human rights and democratic values that inspire people across the world. The Honorable Marco Rubio, Secretary of State of the United States, has long been steadfast advocate for freedom, justice, and the rules of law, not only within our borders, but especially for those who living under authoritarian regime. Senator Rubio, now Secretary Rubio, have consistently championed the cause of oppressed people, calling out abuse, standing with political prisoners, and advancing legislation to hold violators accountable. His leadership in sponsoring and supporting key initiatives such as Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act and Countering Transnational Repression Act, the numerous resolutions defending freedoms of religious, freedom of the press, and civil society has given hope to countless individuals who otherwise have no voice. Your dedication has not gone unnoticed by the Vietnamese American community and by all those who care deeply about human rights in Vietnam. From defending prisoners of consignment to advocating of an open internet and religious freedom, your voice has carried the cries of the voiceless in the hall of power. Today, we are proud to present you with this award in recognition of your tireless advocacy, moral courage, and enduring support for the universal principle of human dignity and liberty. Mr. Secretary, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for standing up with us, and thank you for believing, like we do, that freedom is not a privilege for the few, but the right for all. Please join us to welcome Ms. Turner in representing Mr. Mark Rubio for the award. Thank you, Ms. Turner, again. Due to the time constraint, we would like to introduce Dr. Eric Patterson, as President and CEO of the Victim of Communism Memorial Foundation to this day. The seasoned foreign policy expert, he previously led the Religious Freedom Institute, advocating for the global religious liberty through education and training. Dr. Patterson has also served as a White House Fellow, worked at the U.S. Department of State, and spent over 20 years as commander in the Air National Guard. An accomplished scholar, he has authored over 20 books in ethics, national security, and international affairs, including Just American War and the Reagan Manifesto. Please welcome Mr. Eric Patterson.
Well, I'm deeply honored to be here today, and I thank you for adjusting the schedule. My daughter is a sophomore at West Point, and catching a flight to go be with her right after this. I'm very proud of her choice to serve our country. Yesterday was a very powerful day, April 30th, and I was honored to be with so many of you at the Lincoln Memorial, that great testimony to human freedom, and to hear your personal stories about Vietnam, about your own family, about your cousins, your brothers and sisters, your parents. And I think it's very fitting that just a few moments ago we heard from Ambassador Turner in speaking very clearly about the human rights challenges in Vietnam. Today, I won't go through them. She said them very well. What's interesting is if you read the State Department report on human rights for last year, this is the statement that jumps out right at the beginning of the report. It says, the human rights situation, let me quote it, there has been no significant change in the past year in the human rights situation in Vietnam. They could print that every year for the past 50 years. And for North Vietnam, they could print it for even longer. Well, as many of you know, at the Victims of Communism Foundation, we do education. In fact, our mission statement says, our mission is to educate every generation about the terrible crimes, history, ideology, evil practices of communism. One of the ways we do that is at the Victims of Communism Museum. And if you haven't visited, especially those of you from California, from Texas, and from other places far away, and you're in town for a few days, come and see us there, right at McPherson Square, just 2 blocks from the White House. And there's a beautiful exhibit that the Vietnamese community from here in the greater Washington area has put up. Please come and see us this week. Well, we're educators, and so let me just tell you very briefly a common misperception that the students that I talk to have about Vietnam. And the misperception that we fight against is this. They don't understand how this war that's a part of American history and Vietnamese history, they don't understand how it started, and they have a faulty view of what happened 50 years ago in April of 1975. Here's their faulty view of how it started. They have some sort of view that America was a colonial power, and that all the people in Vietnam were trying to get away from America's colonial power. They've never heard of the 1954 international meeting that sought to bring peace to the region and resulted in the Geneva Accords. And here's what's so fascinating when I explain it to them. U.S. policy so believed at the time that the Vietnamese people would choose democracy, that the U.S. opening position at the Geneva Accords was to move quickly towards unification of Vietnam because democratic elections would bring democratic people to power and would protect human rights. You know what the position of Beijing and Moscow was? They told the people in North Vietnam, no, keep it divided so that we can keep control, deepen our control of the North, and then we'll use subversion and violence, and we'll take over the South. The Western view, and the view of so many people in Vietnam, was that the natural course of history would be towards greater freedom, greater rule of law. But my students don't know that. We have to constantly be explaining to the students they have a wrong view of the 1950s and the 1960s. And then the second thing that I find, this misperception in American youth that I need your help in explaining to them, is they do not understand what happened in 1973, in 1974, 1975. They don't understand what happened to your families. So they have this view that somehow there was a negotiation, and then that what happened in 1974, 1975 was the natural course of events of simply the majority of Vietnamese absorbing South Vietnam. They do not know about attacks from China, for instance, at sea in 1974. They don't know that North Vietnam promised in a peace treaty in 1973 to observe only peaceful means of seeking unification. The students don't know that. They don't understand that there is an internationally signed treaty, that there are international observers. They have a mistaken view that it was just the will of the South Vietnamese people to ultimately to be absorbed. They don't know any of the tragedy, the violence, the horror, the torture, the re-education camps. At VOC, we're telling them. We're telling your stories to the next generation of students so that they can have a right history about what's happened there, about the victims of communism, but also to rededicate the next generation to try to inspire them to this idea of a peaceful, just, free, rights-loving, rule of law, democratic Vietnam in the future. That's our hope and that's our prayer. Thank you.
Please allow me to translate somewhat everything that he said. Thank you, Mr. President. Thưa quý ông bà, quý chị, ông Patterson là một người rất là nổi tiếng trong các cái công cuộc đem sự thật về tội ác cộng sản. Hiện ông là người đã support Vietnamese community của chúng ta ở tại vùng Hoa Kỳ Đông này là về cái việc bảo tàng, và đã gần 6 tháng nay thì ở nơi đó thì chúng ta không chỉ có người Việt Nam của mình và có cả những các quốc gia khác cũng là nơi để họ đem tiếng nói sự thật tội ác cộng sản. Thì một lần nữa xin được cảm ơn ông. Sau đây, con xin mời cô Destiny. May I present Miss Destiny to the stage? She will go over the brief histories of May 11. And Destiny is the president, again, she's the president of the Vietnamese community in Richmond. Please welcome.
Thank you. On behalf of the board member of the Human Rights, I will read the history of the May 11. Honorable Member of Congress, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On May 11, 1990, Dr. Nguyen Đang Quế, on behalf of Nonviolent Movement for Human Rights in Vietnam, courageously released a manifesto calling to the Vietnamese government to respect the fundamental human rights, adopt multi-party political system, and restore the people's right, choose their leader through free and fair election. For this peaceful and principled act, Dr. Nguyen was arrested and sentenced 20 years in prison in 1991. In recognition of his courage and brought the cause justice, May 11 was officially designated as the Human Rights Day in the Commonwealth of Virginia in 1994. This effort was led by Assemblyman Alan Mayer and supported by 8 co-sponsors of the Virginia General Assembly. In his statement, Assemblyman Mayor affirmed that Dr. Wei manifesto echoed the value found in the U.S. Declaration of Independence and our national commitment to liberty and justice. Shortly after, thanks to the determined advocate of Vietnamese American community, the movement gained national momentum. Congresswoman Leslie Vaughn, she's sitting right in front of us, and Senator Charlie Robb introduced the resolution H.R. 333 and S.R. 168 that will later merge into a joint resolution S.J. 168 on May 1994. And President Bill Clinton signed this resolution into law by Public Law 103-258, officially designate May 11 as the Vietnam Human Rights Day in the United States. Since that day, Human Rights Days has served as a powerful reminder, both within Vietnam and globally, of the enduring struggle for freedom of thought, political participation, religious liberty, and human rights dignity. It stands as a symbol of solidarity with those who continue to face oppression for symbol seeking most basic human rights. Each year, we gather not only to commemorate this day, but to renew our shared commitment to support Vietnamese people aspiration for free and democratic futures. The journey continues, and our voice, united in purpose, remain essential is that ongoing struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Destiny. May I have the honor to invite Ms. Leslie Lapkin Byrne onto the stage. Ms. Leslie Lapkin Byrne is a businesswoman and politician in 1992. She became the first woman elected to the United States House of Representatives from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Congresswoman Byrne was the first sponsor of the resolution designating May 11, 1994 as Vietnam Human Rights Day. Please welcome Ms. Byrne.
Xin chào. Dear friends, and you, after 31 years, I believe you are my friends.
Yeah.
I've been here every year, waiting for human rights, every year. As many of you have. I know you noticed the fall of Saigon yesterday. We were very sad. It's a sad occasion. But here in America, I look at it as a new window that opened. Because our country, America, is so much richer because of the Vietnamese Americans who came. They showed us about their culture, their love for art, their education, values, all of these things they brought with them. And so we should celebrate our immigrants, celebrate our Vietnamese immigrants and all the immigrants that come here. Because you know what? Unless you're a Native American, we're all immigrants. We are all immigrants who come here to make this country better. I'm reminded of this Human Rights Day, and I come and point out certain cases that need to be looked into over the years. Excuse me. And I can't sugarcoat this. It's not as good as it was last year. Things are slipping, and they're slipping because of the United States pulling out USAID. It's slipping because we're not on the forefront of trade with Vietnam anymore. We pulled back from that because of tariffs. Those may not have made progress as fast as we wanted, but they did make progress because we had a voice and some leverage in Vietnam because of those institutions. And now those institutions are folding. And we see it all across the world. Whether it's communism or whether it's fascism, and I've said this before, they're two sides of the same coin, because their job is to take away the rights of their people. The only way they survive is to be powerful and close down the will of their people. Make sure that they don't have the religious freedom. Make sure they don't have the right to vote. Make sure they don't have a voice in their government. These are things that are common to both communists and fascists. And we have to watch this all over the world because it's growing. This is the thing that scares me, and I wish I had a better message today because I've devoted my life to human rights. And I want a better message. And the only way that we can get this message out is for everybody to talk to your neighbors, to your friends, to your church groups, to your synagogues, to your temples, whatever it is, about human rights across the world. The Declaration of Human Rights that was signed in the United Nations in the 40s, 1945, 6, was a guarantee to everybody of these basic human rights. And we have to add our voices still to uphold those human rights. Wherever they are abrogated, wherever they are stepped on, we've got to make sure people know. We are the voice of restoring those human rights. We have to be. Because if Vietnam loses their human rights, and all these other nations, we've seen it in Hungary, we're seeing it in Turkey, and yes, we're even starting to see it here. If we don't speak out, they will be gone. And we are, for our children, for our grandchildren, and in some cases for our great-grandchildren, we are saving their future by speaking out and demanding that all citizens of the world, Vietnam and every other country, has the basic human rights that were promised in 1946 in the UN. So I want to say to you, thank you for standing with us. Thank you for being here today. I know that it's a combination of sadness and happiness with yesterday's events. Many of you have strong ties to Saigon and South Vietnam, and I understand that. But your ties to the United States has made us a better country. You have made us a more prosperous country, a more educated country, and I thank you for that. And if I get this right, somebody might give me a prize. Zim Kan Ung. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Mr. Byrne, for the speech. And again, today we have at least 2 persons recognized the fall of Saigon. And seriously, you are right that we have to have our voice and bring our voice, make sure that it got to be listened. Vietnam human right, if we don't raise our voice, it will soon become a norm, and by the time it's like communism, it's at your front door. And if you just be nice, there's a time to be nice, but there's time to be right. You have to be right, and if you need to raise your voice, we have to raise your voice, or else it will be in your house before you realize it. The following program is the recognitions of the Vietnam Human Rights Group. And Vietnam Human Rights Network is 28 years of advocacy, founded in November 1997 in Little Saigon, California. The Vietnam Human Rights Network, VHRN, brings together individuals and organizations worldwide, united in the missions to protect and promote human rights in Vietnam based on Universal Declaration of Human Rights. For nearly 3 decades, VHRN has focused on 3 key goals. Number 1, raising awareness, translating and distributing international human rights documents in Vietnamese, hosting seminars in Vietnamese communities around the world, publishing annual human rights report in Vietnamese and English in 1909, supporting activists, awaiting the annual Vietnam Human Rights Award to 58 individuals and 6 organizations in Vietnam since 2002, partnering with international groups to recognize media activists through the Sidewalk Reporter Award, providing financial, medical, and legal aid to human rights defenders, participating in Vietnam Human Rights Day at U.S. Senate every year since 1998. Third, international advocacy, the collaborating with major human rights organizations like UN, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch, engaging with world leaders, including US and EU officials, attending international conferences such as UN Millennium Forum and World Conference on Democratization in Asia. The Vietnam Human Rights Network remains committed to amplify the voice of those silent in Vietnam and advocating for future rooted in freedom, dignity, and justice. May I have an honor to invite Dr. Tùng Nguyễn, Chairman of Vietnam Human Rights Network, on stage.
Organization and the organizing committee for this honor today. Because this is the honor for all members of Vietnam Human Rights Network, so please allow me to invite members of the network present today just to come forward with me. Hi, Hoa, Angie, Văn, and Bing. Please come forward with me. Very brief. All of us coming from California, except this gentleman outside. Okay, this honor is also for those who have supported our network over 28 years. Vietnamese compatriots and foreign friends, without your support, we would not have been able to achieve our goal. So many thanks. But that is the first step, a small step in the long journey to achieve our goal. So this requires many efforts and especially many solidarity. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Many years long since May 11. May 11, 20 plus years, so this one is 28 years old now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I have the honors to invite Dr. Stephen Snett, the U.S. Commission of International Religious Freedoms, on stage. Chairman Stephen Snett served as U.S. Commissions on International Religious Freedom, U.S. CERT. The retired professor and political philosopher, he spent over 30 years at Catholic University of America, where he found the Institute for the Policy Research and Catholic Study. A lifelong advocate for Catholic social justice, Commissioner Snett has held leadership role with the Catholic Climate Covenant and Catholic Mobilizing Network. He also previously led the Franciscan Action Network and served on President Obama's White House Advisory Council for the Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnership. Please welcome Chairman Stephen Snett.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you just heard, I currently serve as chair of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, or USERF as it's often called. And I'm honored to be here today with you as we celebrate or as we memorialize Vietnam Human Rights Day, a day to remember the importance of advancing fundamental freedoms, including the freedom of religion or belief, commonly referred to as war. It's a day to mourn again for those in Vietnam who have been persecuted and denied their rights because of their religious beliefs. I'm gratified today to see so many familiar faces around the room, people I've come to know and respect in our mutual efforts over the last few years to speak out for freedom of religion or belief in Vietnam. In the moments that I have to speak, I'd like to highlight some of the Commission's work. As many of you know, USERF is an independent bipartisan agency of our government, created about 25 years ago. And our job is to monitor religious freedom worldwide, using international standards, in fact, specifically using the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, which has been mentioned already. And in so doing, we also make policy recommendations to the United States President, the Secretary of State, and Congress, and other parts of our government where freedom of religion ought to be of concern. Each year we release an annual report that assesses religious freedom conditions in countries that we determine to be the worst violators of religious freedom. And since 2002, we have recommended to the United States Department of State that Vietnam be designated as a country of particular concern. This is our worst possible category. It means that we find Vietnam to be among the worst countries in the world in regards to religious freedom. As this year's report from USERF details, the Commission remains extremely concerned about the systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations of religious freedom that are occurring. Vietnamese authorities often threaten, harass, physically attack, detain, and imprison individuals merely because of their religious beliefs. Additionally, in some instances, they have forced individuals to renounce their faith. The Vietnamese government continues to enforce, for example, the 2018 law on belief and religion, and its implementing decrees that strictly control religious affairs of all of its citizens. Among other things, this dangerous law allows authorities to demand financial records from religious organizations and to suspend religious activities of churches for vague offenses. The government also routinely seizes religious property, outlaws independent religious groups. In particular, the government has continued to persecute the independent and unregistered religious groups of the country, such as the Cao Dai, the Wahho Buddhists, the Khmer Kram Buddhists, the Hmong and Montagnard Christians. Among these examples, it's clear that if someone does not belong to the state-sponsored religious organizations in Vietnam, they are at risk of being targeted by the government. Such individuals often find themselves monitored and pressured to join state-sanctioned religious groups. Now, last September, USERF released a report titled, and I'm quoting here, State-Controlled Religion and Religious Freedom in Vietnam. This report from our organization highlights how the Communist Party of Vietnam uses 6 state-controlled religious organizations to restrict religious freedom in the country. These restrictions imposed by the Vietnamese government on independent religious groups clearly infringe on their religious freedom. Individuals should be allowed to practice their faith without having to seek approval from any government. In addition, in our annual report, the Commission maintains a list, a database, of victims around the world who have suffered religious persecution. As of December 24th of last year, that list includes over 80 prisoners whom the Vietnamese government has punished for their religious activities or their religious freedom advocacy. And unfortunately, as we've heard as well, these situations continue to deteriorate. This list continues to grow. We're particularly concerned that ethnic Montagnard and Hmong Christians in the central and northwest highlands remain targets of such persecution, facing detention, arrest, imprisonment, torture, and sometimes being forced to renounce their faith. In March of 2024, last year, preacher Y Bun Biao was found dead, hanging from a tree, after police summoned him to meet. Previously, local authorities threatened, beat, and pressured him to renounce his faith. Indeed, USERF is concerned about the ongoing repression of all religious groups in Vietnam, and will continue to monitor and to highlight the Vietnamese government's violations of religious freedom. Specifically today, we call on the United States Congress to advocate for religious freedom improvements in Vietnam by emphasizing the release of religious prisoners of conscience and by reintroducing relevant legislation such as the Vietnam Human Rights Act, House Resolution 3172. We also urge the administration to prioritize religious freedom in its foreign policy toward Vietnam, to ensure religious freedom and related human rights are not sidelined amidst geopolitical, economic, or security concerns. We also call on the administration to reassess the 2005 U.S.-Vietnam binding agreement to determine whether or not Vietnam's backsliding in religious freedom is a violation of the terms of that agreement. Additionally, we call on the U.S. Department of Commerce to link the removal of Vietnam's non-market economy status with substantive improvements in religious freedom. I want to close today by thanking the Organizing Committee on Vietnam Human Rights Day for putting this event together and for inviting the Commission to be part of your commemoration. Your coalition's work is vital for the advancement of religious freedom and human rights in Vietnam. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Religious freedom is vital for the people of Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. In regarding to religious freedom, we, as a Vietnamese community, haven't heard a lot about Thích Minh Tuệ, And he's become an iconic just because he just simply want to practice Buddhism ways of meditating. And because of that, a person who don't need any money, no house, no asset, nothing. He just simply want to go through his practice. And because of that, he become very famous. And the reason he become very famous is because it's exposed the level of corruptions and how the communist regime planning their people to not only divide the society, but also misguided the people practicing Buddhism. And because of that, they try their best to stop him every step of the way. And today, I have an honor to stay here and bring that up to all. And hopefully the work we've heard will look into how communists is suppressing the religious freedom. Today, Thích Minh Tuệ ended his journey in India successfully, continue to be interrupted and facing the destructions of the communism force behind the scene. So hopefully you all will hear and bring it up to this board of some way, somehow, and hope that to make it right. The next persons I would like to invite the Venerable Thích Minh Viet. Thích Minh Viet is a respected Vietnamese Buddhist monk and human rights advocate. He has long been active in promoting religious freedom, peace, and democracy for Vietnam. As a senior member of Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam, he has represented the Vietnamese Buddhist community in international forums and worked tirelessly to defend spiritual and civil liberty for those under religious persecution. Please invite the Minh.
Thank you very much introducing me. Good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here with you at the big moment, very beautiful day for the Vietnam, the human rights for Vietnam. Dear distinguished guests, as a Buddhist monk and spiritual leader of the Vietnamese American Unified Buddhist Church, I speak today not only for myself, but on behalf of millions of Vietnamese believers who continue to suffer in silence. Religious freedom is not a privilege to be granted or revoked by the state. It is a universal right, yet in Vietnam, that right is crushed under the heel of authoritarian control. The U.S. Department has placed Vietnam on its special watch list for 2 consecutive years. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has again urged the designation of the Vietnam as a country of particular concern due to its systematic and violence of religious freedom. The Unified Buddhist Church of Vietnam has been banned for over 40 years. 40 years. Its temple have been confiscated, its venerable monks harassed and imprisoned, and its leaders, like the late most venerable Thích Nguyên Quang and Thích Quảng Độ. These two religious leaders are very well known around the world. Placed under house arrest for decades, simply for refusing to submit to communist control. The regime demands that all faiths kneel before the party, but our faith teaches us to kneel only before truth and compassion. We therefore respectfully urge Congress to 1. Support the CPC designation for Vietnam. CPC is a country's particular concern. Number 2, introduce and co-sponsor the Vietnam Human Rights Act of the 2025 with targeted sanctions on abusers. 3, urge the administration to vote against Vietnam's 2026 bid for the United Nations Human Rights Council. These actions are not acts of the hostility. They are acts of consent. They affirm that the international community does not turn away when temples are destroyed, when monks are imprisoned, and when the freedom to worship is criminalized. United Buddhist Church of Vietnam continue to stand without compromise, without violence, and without fear. As a moral voice for human dignity and non-violence resistance, we ask you to stand with us. As a Buddhist, I believe in compassion, but compassion is not passive. It requires moral clarity and moral courage. Thank you for listening. Thank you for standing with those who are persecuted for their faith. Thank you for your listening. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Chúng con cảm ơn Thầy Bình Việt. Our next guest will be Father Joseph Tom Văn Nguyễn. His journey from communist Vietnam to American priesthood is a testament of faith and resilience. Devout Catholic family, he founded a Catholic student association in Hanoi and was arrested for advocating religious freedom. At 26, he fled to the U.S., where he deeply his faith and spoke against the human rights abuse, even testified before Congress. In 2017, he entered seminary and studied at St. John Paul II, Mount St. Mary on June 15, 2024. He was ordained in Roots and Archdiocese of Washington, pledging to serve God fully. Chúng con kính mời chân thành.
Good afternoon. This is not homily. I am Father Thong Nguyen, a newly ordained priest of Archdiocese of Washington. So, because I'm newly ordained priest, please be patient and be merciful to me too. Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you today. Together, we speak up for freedom of religion and human rights in Vietnam. I was arrested by the communist government in 2009 because I went to Tham Toa Parish, Diocese of Vinh, to have the persecuted Christian over there. And I also have persecuted Christian in Thái Hà Parish in Hanoi, Dong Chiêm Parish, and Kon Jo Parish in Diocese of Da Nang. And then I faced many difficulties with the communist government. With the will of God, I was able to escape Vietnam to Laos, to Thailand, and thanks to the Lord, I arrived in the US. In 2016, I was granted political asylum. And listening to the God's call, and I entered the seminary. I was ordained for the Diocese of Washington 10 months ago. Now I'm serving at the Our Lady Star of the Sea in Solomons, Maryland. If you have the chance, please come to visit our parish. Coming here with you today, and today is the feast of the Saint Joseph Worker, and also the anniversary of beatification of Pope St. John Paul II, who spoke up for freedom of religion. And we together, and we thank to the Lord for the gift of the freedom of religion and human rights. And we thank to the Lord for the gift of creation. And freedom of religion is a gift from God. As a Catholic priest, I pray Psalms every day. And I love the Psalm. The psalmist prays this: "O God, you are my God, for you I long." Every one of us, although we are different religion, but we believe we have a creator. And creator longing for creator. And right. However, the communist government takes this right and this gift from our people, from Vietnam. And people do not have right to practice their faith. And today we come together. We speak up for people in Vietnam who are voiceless. And we also to give thanks to the Lord for the gift of freedom of religion. And here in the United States of America, And here we have freedom. We need to take our responsibility and to speak up for those who are still living in Vietnam. They do not have right. The church always encourage people to Pope John 23rd, Saint John 23rd, Pope Pio IX, and Pope Pius XII always speak up for freedom of religion. Especially in 1955, Pope Pius IX recognized the rise of the communism, and they did not respect freedom of religion and human dignity. So why today, May 1st, Pope Pius XII declares Saint Joseph as a patron of the church and Saint Joseph the worker. So remind us to continue to work for freedom. Before I leaving my parish to come here, and I celebrate the Mass with the people over there. And I told with people, our people, Jesus says, Heavenly Father is working, so we are at work. So we continue to work for freedom of religion and human rights in Vietnam. And thank you for senators, congressmen, and commission, and for those for love for the people in Vietnam. Thank you very much for your work. And I also thank you for all of you here, example for me, young people. I recognize tiến sĩ Nguyễn Đặng Đình Thắng because I see his work and he have done many good things promoting the religious freedom and human rights in Vietnam. And thank you all. Cháu xin cảm ơn quý ông bà, quý cô bác và quý anh chị.
I would like to reiterate a little bit in American culture or Christian culture. As he said, human right is God-given right. You are your sovereignty and nobody else. So, thank you, Father. Thank you so much to be the voice. Next, I would like to invite and have an honor to bring Colonel Phương Nguyen. Colonel Phương Nguyen has served in U.S. Army officer since 2002, beginning as a chemical officer and graduate of Texas A&M and Webster University. He is currently attending the Army War College in Pennsylvania. His career spanned the deployment to Afghanistan and Iraq, leadership role in acquisition and technology development, and assigned at NATO, the Pentagon, and the U.S. Army Acquisition Corps. Colonel Nguyen also chaired the Vietnamese American Uniformed Service Association, VA-USA, supporting Vietnamese American service members and their family. He remained deeply committed to community service, military family support, and honor the legacies of Vietnamese American veterans. Thank you for your service, sir. Please welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Members of Congress, Ambassador, distinguished guests, friends and families, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be standing here with you today to commemorate the 31st annual Vietnam Human Rights Day. A solemn occasion that underscores enduring struggle for liberty and human dignity. Today, we reaffirm that commitment to defend the fundamental rights that many sacrifice so much to protect. Human rights against oppression, tyranny, and encourage effort to secure freedom for millions, and that we must protect. We also must remember the fight for human rights around the world. For the next anecdote, I'd like everyone to close their eyes for a moment while I tell the story. Imagine a night in Saigon, 1975, the story of resilience. Imagine being a child when Saigon fell. The city was in chaos, tanks moved through neighborhoods, fear gripped families, uncertainty loomed over a nation on the brink of new reality. A young boy sat with his family, and his mother instructed him and siblings to wear black clothing to blend in to survive. She knew that the freedom had once again been stolen, that which knew only was a way forward. That night was not just about survival, it was a stark reminder of the cost of oppression and the resilience of those who dare to fight. That boy grew up knowing the true meaning of freedom, not as an abstract or ideal, but as something tangible, fragile, and worth protecting at all costs. His story is one of millions. It's a testament of humanity's unbreakable spirit to desire to live with dignity. As an Army soldier, it's our duty, not myself, but for everyone here sitting today, not just as defender of freedom, but we're also defenders of human dignity. To endure the voices of those still yearning for freedom are not forgotten. The legacy of Vietnam human rights lives on in every one of us who refuses to succumb to oppression, who dares to dream a life free from tyranny, fear, and who stands up for the rights of so many who have died to uphold. And as we gather here in this Senate body, let's reflect on the profound sacrifice made by all affected families. Their fight was not only for their comrades and their friends, but also for generations of who deserve to live without the shadow of oppression. And also to my fellow friends and service members here in this room, your sacrifices, your resilience, and your steadfast commitment to justice, may we never forget the price that we pay for liberty or for the millions of still fighting for it today. Thank you.
Our next guest is going to be a very special guest. She traveled here from Houston. Ms. Pham Thanh Nguyen is a Vietnamese blogger, an activist committed to defending human rights and national sovereignty. She was sentenced to 4 years in jail and 3 years under house arrest. She has focused her effort on environmental protection, freedom of expression, and advocated for Vietnam territorial integrity. Her activism led to involvement with several pro-democracy organizations, including former Vietnamese Prisoner of Conscience Association, Bloc 8406, and the Network of Vietnamese Bloggers. Through her writing and advocacy, she's courageously challenged government, censorship, and repression, becoming vital voice with those fighting for greater freedom and justice in Vietnam. Mời chị Phạm Thanh Yên.
Sorry, I don't speak English, so I will speak Vietnamese. Kính thưa quý vị, 2 năm trước, vào tháng 4 năm 2023, gia đình tôi đặt chân đến miền đất tự do này nhờ chương trình tiếp nhận người tị nạn chính trị của chính phủ Hoa Kỳ. Hôm nay chúng tôi vinh dự có mặt ở đây với tư cách là nhân chứng, là nạn nhân của sự đàn áp không ngừng nghỉ tại Việt Nam. Tôi và chồng tôi là anh Huỳnh Anh Tú, là hai trong số ít những người lên tiếng ở Việt Nam còn sống và thoát khỏi sự bao vây của nhà nước Cộng sản Việt Nam để tố cáo tội ác. Nhiều người trước và sau chúng tôi đã chết trong tù hoặc trở về với bệnh tật, bị bao vây kinh tế và luôn luôn bị khủng bố. Em chồng tôi là Huỳnh Anh Trí đã bị giam cầm suốt 14 năm và đã qua đời chỉ 6 tháng sau khi ra tù vì bệnh AIDS. Cai tù đã cố ý cùng chân Trí bằng chiếc cùm còn dính máu và thịt của người bạn tù nhiễm AIDS trước đó. Đó không phải là sự cẩu thả, đó là một hình thức giết người có chủ đích, tinh vi và tàn nhẫn. Khi tôi đang nói ở đây, bạn bè tôi, rất nhiều người vẫn đang bị giam cầm. Có người phải ở tù lần thứ 2, có người đang phải chạy trốn, bị nạn ở đó. Tất cả họ đang đối mặt với hiểm nguy và có thể bị Hà Nội truy bắt bất cứ lúc nào. Thưa quý vị, có thể quý vị đã được nghe về các cái báo cáo về vi phạm nhân quyền và tình trạng ngược đãi tù nhân lương tâm tại Việt Nam suốt nhiều năm qua. Nhưng vượt xa tất cả những chi tiết được kể lại về sự đáng sợ và sự tàn bạo mà cả thế giới được biết, vẫn không đủ ngôn từ để diễn đạt hết những câu chuyện đầy máu, nước mắt và cả xác người với sự tàn bạo của nhà cầm quyền Cộng sản Việt Nam. Có người đã phải tự hủy hoại thân thể của mình để thoát khỏi sự chịu đựng đau đớn trong nhà tù với sự bỏ mặc không chăm sóc về y tế của trại giam. Đó là trường hợp của người tù chính trị Phạm Xuân Thân. Ông đã gần 80 tuổi, bị giam cầm hơn 20 năm nay trong nhà tù Xuân Mộc Lộc với bản án không có ngày về. Đã có những người lên tiếng về công bằng xã hội, bị bắt giam đã chết một cách đáng nghi ngờ trong nhà tù như thầy giáo Đào Quang Thực, nhà báo tự do Đỗ Công Đương, ông Huỳnh Hữu Đạt, mục sư Đinh Diêm, ông Phan Thanh Ý, ông Phan Văn Thu và một số người khác. Công an Cộng sản Việt Nam áp dụng việc tra tấn có từ thời Xô Viết mà nay đã nâng lên những mức độ cao hơn, như đưa người vào trại tâm thần, cưỡng ép điều trị với những loại thuốc không tên, không bản án, không bệnh án và không có cả tên bác sĩ chịu trách nhiệm. Chúng tôi và thế giới có danh sách dài của những người như vậy. Đó là nhà văn Phạm Thành, nhà báo Lê Anh Hùng, ông Nguyễn Trung Lĩnh, ông Trịnh Bá Phương, bà Nguyễn Thúy Hạnh. Đáng gây sợ hơn là vô số những tù nhân vô danh khác đang chịu những bản án bí mật khắp đất nước mà không biết khi nào có thể nhìn thấy ánh sáng tự do. Để duy trì sự cai trị, chính phủ Việt Nam ngày càng gia tăng việc bắt bớ và sử dụng biện pháp ngược đãi hết sức tinh vi nhằm thực hiện chính sách hủy hoại các nhà bất đồng chính kiến trong tù lẫn ngoài đời. Thưa quý vị, chiến tranh đã kết thúc tròn nửa thế kỷ, nhưng người Việt vẫn phải đi tìm tự do bằng máu, nước mắt và bằng chính mạng sống của mình. Năm nay, cộng đồng người Việt Nam tại hải ngoại kỷ niệm 50 năm ngày gọi là Quốc hận, ngày chế độ Việt Nam Cộng Hòa bị quân Cộng sản xâm lược và hủy diệt. Đã 50 năm, nhưng chế độ hôm nay vẫn giữ sự thù hận, căm ghét với những gì không còn tồn tại. 8 năm trước, ngày 2 tháng 5 năm 2017, ông Nguyễn Hữu Tấn, một công dân Vĩnh Long, đã bị vây bắt chỉ vì công an tìm thấy trong nhà ông có một tấm vải màu vàng mà họ cho đó là hình ảnh của lá cờ Việt Nam Cộng Hòa. Nhưng thực tế, thì đó chỉ là vật liệu được nhà sản xuất thiết kế ra để trang trí cho những lon nước rảnh khác. 2 ngày sau, công an thông báo ông Tấn đã lấy dao tự cắt cổ và chết trong nhà tù không lý do, và chính công an cũng không giải thích được cái chết này với gia đình của nạn nhân. Việt Nam trên bề mặt là phát triển kinh tế và các mối quan hệ ngoại giao khéo léo, nhưng bên trong người dân phải sống trong nỗi sợ hãi triền miên. Chúng tôi đặc biệt quan ngại vào dịp 30 tháng 4 năm nay, nhà cầm quyền Cộng sản Việt Nam đã tổ chức diễu binh trọng thể với sự tham gia của Trung Cộng như một hành động tri ân sự hỗ trợ của Bắc Kinh trong chiến tranh, và cũng là lời nhắc nhở với cộng đồng quốc tế về sự đoàn kết giữa hai đảng Cộng sản. Việc chọn kỷ niệm ngày Quốc hận bằng một màn phô diễn vũ lực chung với Trung Cộng không chỉ là một sự khiêu khích mà còn cho thấy rõ lập trường của Hà Nội. Họ không giấu giếm sự thần phục trước Bắc Kinh, kể cả về mặt biểu tượng và chính trị. Việt Nam và Hoa Kỳ đã thiết lập quan hệ đối tác chiến lược toàn diện, một bước ngoặt được ca ngợi là lịch sử. Nhưng hàng năm, không chỉ dịp 30 tháng 4, truyền thông nhà nước vẫn tuyên truyền luận điệu chống Mỹ, tái hiện hình ảnh kẻ thù xâm lược và gieo rắc hận thù chiến tranh. Tôi tin đó không phải cách hành xử của một đối tác đáng tin cậy. Nhà cầm quyền Hà Nội cần đô la, nên một mặt kêu gọi người Việt hải ngoại về nước làm ăn, đầu tư, nói về hòa hợp hòa giải dân tộc, nhưng mặt khác lại gọi họ là thế lực chủ thù địch và tạo cớ trừng phạt bất cứ ai thể hiện quan điểm khác với chế độ. Tôi tin đó không phải cách hành xử của một nhà nước chân chính phục vụ nhân dân. Việt Nam muốn trở thành bạn với Hoa Kỳ, nhưng lại bỏ tù những công dân của mình vì họ chia sẻ các giá trị của Hoa Kỳ như tự do ngôn luận, tự do báo chí, quyền được phản biện chính sách của nhà nước. Nhưng tôi đến đây không để nói về chiến tranh hay lòng thù hận. Thưa quý vị, tôi đến đây để nói về khát vọng tự do, về lương tri và phẩm giá của con người. Tôi tin rằng chừng nào nhà cầm quyền Cộng sản Việt Nam còn coi những quốc gia giữ nguyên tắc tự do và quyền con người là kẻ thù, thì những quốc gia đó dù có đang bang giao với Việt Nam cũng đang bị coi thường, bị lừa gạt để trục lợi. Chúng tôi lên tiếng để đất nước mình có được lộ trình tự do, nhân quyền như quý vị đã trải qua và tranh đấu vì những nguyên tắc đó cho nước Mỹ. Và vì vậy, chúng tôi mong mỏi sự ủng hộ của quý vị, của nước Mỹ trong con đường chung đi đến tương lai. Xin chân thành cảm ơn.
Thank you, Ms. Pham Nguyen. May I, ladies and gentlemen, may I have permission to translate all her script in detail? I'm sorry, it will take a little bit long, but please listen to all the true words, because there is no word better than coming from the victim themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago, on April 2023, my family arrived in this land through the U.S. government political refugees resettlement program. Today, we are honored to stand before you as witnesses and victims of ongoing repressions in Vietnam. My husband and I are among the few who spoke out in Vietnam and lived to escape the grip of the communist regime, to expose its crimes. Many others before us and after us have perished in prisons or returned home only to face chronic illness, economic strangulation, and constant surveillance and harassment. My brother-in-law, Prince Andre, was imprisoned for 14 years and died just 6 months after his release from complications related to AIDS. The prison guard had deliberately shackled his legs with chains still stained with blood and flesh from another inmate known to be infected. This was not negligent. It was a calculated, cruel form of execution. Even as I speak here today, my friends remain behind bars. Some are imprisoned for second time. Others have fled into exile. All of them live under threat and could be hunted down by the Hanoi regime at any moment. You may have read human rights reports over the years detailing the abuse of prisoners of conscience in Vietnam. But what has been written, as horrific as it is, cannot fully capture the reality, the blood, the tears, the human remains left behind by Vietnam communist brutality. Some prisoners have had to mutilate themselves in protest against inhumane prison conditions and deliberate medical neglect. One such case is that a political prisoner, Phạm Xuân Thăng, nearly 80 years old. He has spent over 20 years behind bars in Son Lộc prison with no release date in sight. Others who dare to speak out for justice have died mysteriously in custody. Đào Quang Thục, Đỗ Công Dương, Huỳnh Hữu Đạt, Đinh Diên, Phan Thanh Thu, Phan Thanh Ý. Vietnam police applied Soviet-era torture tactics, now refined in more sinister methods, such as forced psychiatric confinement with unnamed drugs, no diagnosis, no responsible medical staff. We can name many subject to this horror. Writer Phạm Thành, journalist Lê Anh Hùng, Nguyễn Trung Lĩnh, Trịnh Bá Phương, Nguyễn Thí Hạnh. And then there are many anonymous prisoners held in secret, sentenced in silence, who have never again seen freedom or sunlight to maintain its grip on power. The Vietnamese government has escalated its arrest and refined its method of repression, systematically destroying dissidents both behind bars and in everyday life. 50 years have passed since the end of the Vietnam War, yet our people still seek freedom with blood, with tears, with their very life. This year's Vietnamese diaspora marks the 50th anniversary that what we call Black April, the day of Republic Vietnam fell to communist invasion. Thought half a century had passed. The regime hatred for what no longer exists still endures. On May 2nd, 2017, Nguyễn Hữu Tấn, a resident of Vĩnh Long, was arrested simply because police found in his home a yellow cloth they claimed resembled the flag of the Republic of Vietnam. It was in fact a promotion fabric from a soft drink manufacturer. Tuesday later, the police informed his family that Mr. Tấn slit his own throat and died in custody. Offering no plausible explanation, Vietnam may appear outwardly modern, economically vibrant, diplomatically skillful, but its people still live in fear. We are particularly concerned that on this year's anniversary of April 30th, the Vietnamese authority will hold grand military parade with the participants of China, an act of framed as a gesture to gratitude for Belgian support during the war, and a symbolic reminder to the international of the solidarity between the two communist parties. Choosing to commemorate the fall of Saigon, what we call the Black April, with the joint displays of military force alongside China, is not only proper provocation, but a clear indication of Hanoi's position that they make no attempt to conceal their subservience to Beijing, both symbolically and politically. Today, Vietnam, the United States are comprehensive strategic partner. The partnership heralds as historic. Yet every April, Vietnam state media still spread anti-American propaganda, replaying wartime narrative and reviving the image of the U.S. as imperialist enemy. I do not believe this is the conduct of trustworthy partner. The Hanoi government seeks American dollars. It urged overseas Vietnamese to return and invest, preaches national reconciliation, yet still brand them as hostile force, and punish anyone who voices dissent. I do not believe this is the conduct of a legitimate government that serves its people. Vietnam claims to want friendship with the United States, yet tell its citizens for embracing American values, free speech, free press, and the right to question those who's in power. But I am not here to speak of war or hatred. I am here to speak of the yearning for liberty, the human dignity, and of moral courage. I believe that as long as Vietnam communist rulers view countries that uphold freedom and human rights as enemy, then those countries, even as diplomatic partners, are being deceived and exploited. We raise our voice so that Vietnam might one day follow a path toward freedom and human rights, just as you once did, just as you still defend those values for America. And that is why we ask for your support, for the support of the United States in this shared journey toward the future of liberty and justice. Thank you very much. Ms. Stephanie.
Our next guest is going to be Mr. Nguyen Anh Tu, who's Phạm Thanh Nghiên husband. He's a former political prisoner and blogger. He was spent 14 years in jail and 7 years under house arrest. He's dedicated his life to promote democracy, human rights, freedom of expression, the environmental protection, and press freedom in Vietnam, strongly committed and national sovereignty. Nguyen Anh Tu has been an active member of Network of Vietnam Blogger. Through his advocacy, he has challenged government, oppression, and censorship, working tirelessly to defend the rights of Vietnam citizens. His efforts have made him a prominent figure among those striving for greater political and civil liberty in Vietnam. Mời anh Nguyen Anh Tu.
Dạ kính thưa các cô, chú bác và anh chị em. Xin lỗi con không biết tiếng Anh. Xin phép được nói tiếng Việt. Kính thưa quý vị, trước tiên tôi xin cảm ơn quý vị đã cho tôi một cơ hội hiện diện tại nơi đây hôm nay. Thật khó để diễn đạt chặng đường 4 năm tù đầy chỉ trong vài phút ngắn ngủi. Tôi đã ra tù gần 12 năm. Có những điều đã phải phai mờ, nhưng cũng có những điều ký ức sẽ theo tôi suốt đời. Tôi và em trai Huỳnh Anh Trí bị bắt vào đêm 29 tháng 12 năm 1999. Ngay sau đó, chúng tôi bị tách ra và thẩm vấn riêng. Hơn 10 viên an ninh thay phiên nhau hỏi cung tôi suốt 72 giờ không ngừng nghỉ. Suốt 3 ngày 3 đêm, Tôi không được ăn, không ngủ, không được ngủ. Mỗi khi mệt quá, gục xuống, tôi lập tức bị họ kéo dậy bằng cách giật tóc và hắt nước vào mặt tôi. Một trong số họ đánh tôi, những người khác thì chửi bới và đe dọa. Nếu không nhận tội, tôi sẽ đối mặt với bản án 20 năm tù hoặc chung thân, thậm chí tử hình. Sang ngày thứ tư, tôi bị đưa vào buồng biệt giam khoảng chừng 6 mét vuông, không cửa sổ, ăn uống và tiêu tiện tại chỗ. Sau 72 giờ bị tra khảo liên tục, tôi tưởng rằng mình sẽ được nghỉ ngơi. Nhưng vừa thiếp đi, tôi nghe thấy những âm thanh mang dại, tiếng tru chéo kinh hoàng vang lên trong đầu tôi. Tôi cố bịt tai. Nhưng âm thanh ấy càng lúc càng rợn người. 26 năm đã trôi qua, đôi khi âm thanh đó vẫn bất ngờ quay lại, khiến tôi hoảng loạn. Tôi bị biệt giam khoảng 1 năm rưỡi trước khi ra tòa. 8 tháng đầu, tôi liên tục bị gọi cùng một lúc. Vào lúc 1-2 giờ sáng, gần sáng họ đưa tôi trở lại buồng, và chỉ vài tiếng sau lại có một nhóm khác đến tiếp tục thẩm vấn. Chúng tôi gọi hình thức này là sa luân chiến. Một người phải đấu trí với cả chục an ninh. Tôi từng bị chuyển qua 5 nhà tù khác nhau, chưa kể cả các lần chuyển buồn, chuyển trại. Ký ức ám ảnh nhất đối với đời tôi là đói và rất không ai có thể sống nổi ngần ấy năm tù nếu chỉ dựa vào khẩu phần ăn của nhà tù cung cấp. Chúng tôi sống được là nhờ sự đùm bọc của các tu sĩ Công giáo, những người bị bắt sau năm 1975 chỉ vì là họ là tu sĩ. Đói và thèm khát đến mức có hôm tỉnh dậy, tôi thấy miệng mình dính thứ gì như chất bột màu trắng. Tôi chợt nhớ đêm trước mình đã mơ được ăn no. Và trong mơ tôi đã ngay đặt điều ấy giải thích vì sao quanh miệng tôi dính những chất màu trắng vào sáng hôm sau. Kính thưa quý vị, tôi và em trai tôi bị kết án 14 năm tù cùng vụ, còn 36 người khác nữa bị kết án từ 2 năm đến 20 năm. Gần 10 người đã chết vì đói, vì lao động khổ sai, vì bệnh tật không được chữa trị. Chưa kể đến những người chết trong các vụ án khác, như ông Nguyễn Minh Tân, hàng ngày vẫn lao động cuốc đất, nuôi cá, gặt lúa, nhưng chết vì không có gì để ăn. Tù chính trị và cả tù hình sự đều phải lao động khổ sai, làm các công việc nặng nhọc như khai quang, cuốc đất, trồng rau. Nhưng những năm đầu chúng tôi chưa bao giờ được ăn những gì mình làm ra. Dù chỉ là vài cọng rau, nhiều khi tôi phải hái cỏ non nấu lên để mà ăn thay rau. Chúng tôi nhiều lần tuyệt thực để phản đối ngược đãi, yêu cầu có cai ngục, thực thi đúng chính sách, quy định do chính nhà nước của họ đề ra. Cuộc tuyệt thực lâu nhất kéo dài đến 14 ngày tại trại giam Xuân Lộc năm 2010. Với hàng chục tù nhân chính trị tham gia, sau sự kiện đó chúng tôi bị chuyển trại. Tôi thì bị đưa về nhà tù An Phước, tỉnh Bình Dương. Thưa quý vị, 14 năm tù không chỉ là sự chịu đựng những bi kịch của cá nhân mình, mà còn phải chứng kiến nỗi đau biết bao người đồng cảnh. Tôi chưa từng thấy ai bị đánh đến chết, nhưng có nhiều người chết vì ngược đãi một cách tinh vi và có hệ thống. Ví dụ, người mắc bệnh tim mạch, cao huyết áp bị cấm mang thuốc và họ chết. Như ông Lê Thân, ông Phan Văn Trước, nguồn nước bẩn, thực phẩm ôi thiêu, bồn cầu hỏng không sửa, từng chút một hủy hoại cơ thể tù nhân. Tù đài không chỉ là tra tấn, bệnh tật, chết chóc, mà còn là sự cô lập tinh thần. Chúng tôi bị cách ly khỏi tù hình sự, bị kiểm soát mọi giao tiếp với nhau, vì không được sử dụng giấy bút, không được đọc sách báo, nên chúng tôi không thể viết, không thể đọc, không thể ghi chép lại bất cứ điều gì tai nghe mắt thấy, hoặc chỉ đơn giản là viết về những cảm xúc mình đã có. Không ít lần tôi ý định tự tử và từng chuẩn bị một cái chết cho mình, nhưng có một sức mạnh vô hình mà sau này tôi tin đó là Thiên Chúa đã nâng đỡ tôi phải sống để chiến thắng. Chỉ ít là không thất bại trước chỉ ít là không thất bại trước thế lực tà ác. Thưa quý vị, chúng tôi kể lại những điều này không chỉ cho bản thân mình mà còn cho những người đã chết, như anh tôi, Huỳnh Thành Trí, ông Trương Hữu Sương, Nguyễn Nhân Trại, Bùi Đăng Thị, Đinh Năng Định và nhiều người vô danh khác. Chúng tôi kể thay cho những người vẫn đang bị giam giữ, những người không có cơ hội cất tiếng nói cho chính bản thân mình. Tôi mong rằng quý vị, những tiếng nói mạnh mẽ vì tự do, vì nhân quyền sẽ không hơn những nơi còn trong bóng tối, những con người vẫn đang chịu cảnh tù đời vì tranh đấu cho tự do. Và xin thân cảm ơn.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to translate his scripts in English. Ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today. It is difficult to convey the full reality of 14 years in prison in just a few short minutes. I've been released for nearly 12 years now. Some memories have faded, but others will stay with me for the rest of my life. My younger brother, Huỳnh Anh Trí, and I were arrested on the night of December 30th, 1999. Immediately after, we were separated and interrogated individually. More than 10 security officers took turns questioning me for 72 hours non-stop. For 3 days and 3 nights, I was not allowed to eat or sleep. Every time I collapsed from exhaustion, they would yank me up by the hair or throw water on my face. One officer beat me while others cursed and threatened me, saying if I didn't confess, I would face 20 years life imprisonment or even the death penalty. On the 4th day, I was thrown into solitary cell about 6 square meters wide, without window. I had to eat, drink, and relieve myself in that same space. After 72 hours of non-stop interrogation, I thought I would finally get to rest. But as I drifted off to sleep, terrifying sounds filled in my head. Wild shrieks and howls that seemed to come from inside my skull. I tried covering my ears, but the sound only grew louder. Even now, 26 years later, those sounds sometimes return, sending me into a panic. I was held in solitary confinement for about a year and a half before even seeing the courtroom. For the first 8 months, I was frequently called in for interrogation for 1 or 2 at 1 or 2 a.m. Near dawn, they returned to my cell, only for a different group to come in a few hours later to continue questioning. We call this method rotational assault. One prisoner mentally battling dozens of security officers. I was transferred through 5 different prisons, not counting all the time I was moved between cells and camps. But the most haunted memory of all was hunger, deep, running hunger. No one who survived so many years in prison on the state food, not ration alone. We survived thanks to the care and sharing of Catholic priests, many of whom had been jailed after 1975 simply for being clergy. I was hungry. I once woke up to find a white powdery substance around my mouth. Then I remembered I had dreamed about eating a full meal, and I had been chewing in my sleep. Thus explained the white residue around my lip was the next morning. My brother and I were sentenced for 14 years in prison. Alongside of us, 36 others were tried in the same case, sentenced to between 2 and 20 years. Nearly 10 of them died from starvation, forced labor, untreated illness, and that's not counting those who died in those cases like Mr. Nguyen Minh Tân, who worked every day farming, digging, raising fish, and yet died because there was nothing to eat. Both political and criminal prisoners were subject to forced labor. I did everything from clearing land, digging pond, and growing vegetables, but we were never allowed to eat what we proud, not even a single leaf. We had to gather wild grass and cook it as substitute greens. We went on hunger strike many times to protest mistreatment and demand that prison authorities follow their own policy. The longest hunger strike that took place lasted for 14 days at Son Lak prison in 2010, with dozens of political prisoners participating. After that, we were transferred. I was sent to An Phước prison and Bình Dương province. 14 years in prison meant nothing, not only enduring personal hardship, but also witness the suffering of many others in the same plight. I never saw anyone beaten to death, but I saw many die from more subtle, systematic abuse. For example, those with heart disease or high blood pressure were denied their medication and they died, like Mr. Lê Thăng and Mr. Phan Văn Trừ. Dirty water, rotten food, broken toilet left unrepaired. These slowly destroy our body bit to bit. Prison was not just about torture, disease, and death. There was also a campaign of psychological isolation. We were kept separate from criminal inmates, and all communication between us was tightly controlled. Denied pen and paper. We couldn't write. We wouldn't allow books or newspapers, so we couldn't read or record anything we saw, heard, or felt, not even our own emotion. Many times I contemplate suicide. I even prepared for it, but there was an invisible strength, something I later came to believe that was God. That lit me up. I had to live, if only not to be defeated by the force of evil. Ladies and gentlemen, we share this story not for ourselves, but for those who have died, like my brother, Huỳnh An Trí, Mr. Trương Văn Sơn, Nguyễn Văn Đại, Bùi Đăng Thùy, Đinh Đăng Đình, and so many others with names you may never know. We speak on behalf of those still behind bars, those who have no voice. I hope that you voice your freedom, human rights, and not forget the place still shrouded in darkness, or the people who are still suffering. Before the closing today, I would like to invite Mr. Piero Tosi, the staff director on behalf of Representative Chris Smith, on stage, please.
Thank you, and my apologies to those that were expecting Congressman Smith. He had to go to the White House, and the things got started, I think, an hour and a half later than they were supposed to, so the whole day got moved back. So instead you have me, and it's a very, actually, difficult role to come after such a compelling speaker. Really, that was incredibly moving, and anything after that really is anticlimactic. But we're here to commemorate Vietnam Human Rights Day, but also the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, and the consequences of that day and that Black April that have echoed now for 5 decades. Vietnam's communists celebrate what they call Liberation Day, even though the path to liberation is paved with broken lives, broken bodies, and broken dreams. Their jails are filled right now with Vietnamese whose only crime is seeking greater freedoms and human rights. We must always remember and honor the lives lost in Vietnam. We must, Vietnamese and American. We must remember the grief of families who lost loved ones and the sacrifice of millions who were forced to flee their homeland in search of safety and freedom. On this sober occasion, we celebrate the many contributions made by former Vietnamese refugees to the United States. Many in this room here today were part of that Boat People flotilla. Out of this tragedy and despair, you built a life in the United States and made this country, our country, a better place. Yours is a remarkable immigrant story in a nation stitched together by so many immigrant stories. Some of you may know this, but members of Chris Smith's family also are Vietnamese American. His son married a Vietnamese American, his grandchildren are Vietnamese. His support for Vietnam, and mine as well, is both personal and rooted in a strong support for democracy and human rights. Vietnam's communist government, on the other hand, has no interest in freedom. Its only interest is to squash anyone who may challenge its authoritarian rule. Freedom of the press? Crushed. Internet freedom? Censored. Independent labor unions? Denied. Freedom of religion? Suppressed. The Vietnamese Communist government fears the independent voices of the Vietnamese people. It fears people of faith. It silences labor advocates and journalists rather than listening to their calls for reform. It jails bloggers and democracy advocates. I've been told that Vietnamese diplomats were scattered on Capitol Hill yesterday, seeking U.S. trade and the lifting of tariffs. Of course, they didn't come to see Mr. Smith or to come to see me. And I think that's because they know where Chris Smith stands, and they know what he would say to them. He would tell them to liberate all the political prisoners and end online censorship. Respect the rights of ethnic minorities, Montagnards, Hmong, Khmer Krom. Sever the close relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. Despite the historical and patriotic resistance that the people of Vietnam have felt against China's imperialism, the ties between the Communist Party leadership in Hanoi and Beijing have deepened in recent years. Party delegations regularly visit and collaborate, including just this past month. It's not realistic to expect Vietnam to be a strategic partner of the United States when the Vietnamese Communist Party leaders are co-opted and corrupted by their ties to Beijing. We all know that the China challenge will shape U.S. policy in the next several decades. Finding allies and partners in a world of strategic rivalries is critically important. But creating a realistic U.S.-Vietnamese relationship under the shadow of China is critically important. But there must be closer alignment of American and Vietnamese interests. Then we need to see a free Vietnam. Any strategic partnership that we engage with the government or any talk of that should come with conditions. We need free speech first, religious freedom, fair trade, just as a way to start here.